Hello, I'm Brian Souza, CEO and founder of Productivity Drivers and author of the New York Times bestseller, The Weekly Coaching Conversation. And I'm curious, if you're an executive, perhaps a VP or director in sales or HR or some other functional area, or maybe even a mid-level manager or frontline manager, have you ever felt that your team members have more to give, but you weren't quite sure to get it out of them? Have you ever wanted them to perform up to their potential, but didn't quite know how to make it happen? Are you looking for that one new game-changing strategy that actually works and will truly transform your team's performance? Well, if so, you will definitely want to stay with me because that's exactly what our brand new free workshop series, How to Build a High-Performance Team Step by Step, is all about. By the way, just to clarify, I'm not just talking about incremental improvement. I'm talking about truly transforming your team's performance so that you and your team members consistently exceed expectations, consistently rank at the top of the leaderboard, and consistently dominate the competition. And in a few minutes, you'll discover why this bar scene video holds the secret to taking your team's performance and your career to the next level, and how this clip ties into my story, your story, and a fateful Disney cruise that literally changed my life. So keep watching and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a few minutes. And if you watch this video until the very end, you'll discover a new and incredibly simple strategy that will help you get a lot more out of your team members. More effort, more productivity, more results without any extra time, hassles, or work on your part. Now, I know that may sound like a lot of hype, but it isn't. It's a promise, and you'll understand why in just a few minutes. Plus, if you watch this video into the very end, you'll also discover 3 traps you absolutely must avoid if you want to truly build a world-class high-performance team. In this first video, I'm going to share with you the one thing you must do to take your team's performance and your career to the next level. And you're going to be shocked at just how simple this one thing truly is. As you'll see, while I packed a lot of really great content and new and innovative strategies into this workshop that will definitely help you move the needle on your team's performance, but on a deeper, more meaningful level, what I'm about to share with you not only has the power to transform your team's performance and your organization's productivity, but it might just change your life. Now look, I know that may sound a little melodramatic, but do me a favor and hear me out. Because not only is this transformation I'm talking about something that I've studied academically and experienced professionally, but I've lived it personally. In fact, if you've read my newly revised book, The Weekly Coaching Conversation, by the way, if you haven't, you definitely should. It's a very quick read and really prime you for this incredible journey we're about to embark on. Anyhow, if you have read it, you may be wondering about the story behind the story and whether or not the 2 main characters in the fable, Brad and Coach, are actually based on real people. Well, it all started a number of years ago when my research team and I were about halfway through an exhaustive research project on employee performance that we completed along with Ipsos, one of the world's leading research firms, which, little did I realize at the time, would monopolize 5 years of my time and encompass thousands of managers and team members from hundreds of companies. And while at the time we hadn't yet completed all of our research, through our preliminary findings, we had already seen enough to know that we were onto something big, something potentially really, really big. But before we went public with the findings, I decided it might be a good idea to at least sanity check things by a few friends and colleagues in the industry whose opinion I respected. One of those people was Ken Blanchard. So I called up Ken, who doesn't live too far from me here in the San Diego area, and he says, sure, come on over. I'd love to learn more about it. So I'm sitting with Ken at his kitchen table, having a cup of coffee, taking him through some of our preliminary findings. And all of a sudden he stops me. Brian, you're onto something big. You've got to write a fable. I'm thinking, yeah, easy for you to say. Heck, I have no idea how to write a fable. I don't even read fiction. But at Ken's encouragement, I decided to at least noodle on to see if I could come up with an interesting storyline to wrap around this new framework that we had started to develop. But after months and months of racking my brain, nothing came. And frankly, I was about to give up until fate intervened. As luck would have it, I was actually taking my family on a Disney cruise, and I thought, what better place for a little creative inspiration than a Disney cruise, right? Wrong. No, I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise ship, but it was a first for me. And I didn't realize they're not exactly conducive to getting much work done, especially on a Disney cruise. I mean, it seemed every time I grabbed my journal and tried to sneak away for a little creative brainstorming, Mickey would pop around the corner, Tinkerbell would flutter by, followed by a swarm of screaming kids. Finally, about halfway through the trip, having made zero progress, I decided to just pack my journal away in my suitcase and just enjoy the rest of the vacation with the family. And I kid you not, later that evening, in the middle of the night, all of a sudden, my eyes pop wide open. I've got it. So I grabbed my journal, tiptoed out on the balcony, sat down and started writing as fast as I could. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. I mean, the ideas were literally flowing through me faster than I could capture them on paper. which is odd for me because I honestly struggle with writing and really have to work hard at it. But the stranger part was it didn't come to me as a book. It came to me as a movie. And in fact, it looked a lot like this.
She was still upset, but she wasn't as crazy as she was. Remember that first night she came in? She was at the end of the bar. I didn't think she was gonna Yeah. How you doing? What can I get you?
So this is the halftime, huh? I've heard a lot about this place.
You don't say.
So anyway, pint of the local lager. Keep them coming.
Yeah, what's going on?
I've got all my direct reports coming in to help me celebrate. They should be coming through the door any minute now.
Hey, Nick, don't let those bums buy me any drinks tonight. Put it on my tab.
You got it, Coach.
It's a pretty fancy suit you got on there, kid. Don't you think you're a little overdressed for a fine establishment like this?
Yeah, I guess, but I do have a good excuse.
Yeah?
Just got back from the regional awards meeting.
Sales meeting. Did you win anything?
As a matter of fact, I did. You're looking at the sales leader of the year. And direct reports are coming in to help me celebrate.
Well, congratulations. Must have been a heck of a year.
Oh, I crushed my number. Not bad for a rookie manager.
Say, Coach.
Yeah.
Looks like you won it.
Oh, better get back to my game before they start cheating me. Wow. Sales leader of the year. First time out of the gate. Congratulations, kid.
Thanks.
Yeah. Oh.
Your watch broken or something?
No, it's just my team was supposed to be here 15 minutes ago. But hey, it's Friday night. With the traffic and all.
Yeah.
Should be coming through the door any minute now.
Tick tock, 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 tick tock. I'm having one of those days.
It was pretty cool, huh? Well, it was pretty cool for me to see the vision I had in the cruise ship that day with the two main characters from the fable, Brad and Coach, actually come to life. But in hindsight, I now realize that the reason that story came to me so easily and so effortlessly is because that story, the story from the book, is really my story. It's me acting as Coach today, knowing all that I've learned and studied and experienced, having a conversation with me acting as Brad 20 plus years ago when I first started managing people and learning about leadership. By the way, in case you're wondering, no, I didn't get stood up my team at a dive bar. That'd have been horrible. But I did have a Brad moment early in my management career that not only altered the course of my career, but literally changed my life. Now, for a bit of personal background, I grew up from pretty humble beginnings, put myself through school, earned a degree in international business, and went up to the Bay Area in the mid-90s and got my start in high-tech sales. I rose through the ranks pretty quickly, and by the time I was in my mid-20s, I was managing close to a $100 million business unit for a publicly traded company. And to top it off, I just learned I was being promoted again to become the youngest member of the executive management committee. And let me just tell you, boy, did I think I was cool. I thought I'd made it, right? So my wife and I, who were newly married at the time, had just bought a beautiful new house. And before I transitioned into the new role, I decided to have my team over for a little celebratory send-off. I mean, we pulled out all the stops and everyone was clearly having a great time. Everyone, that is, except for me, a little later in the evening. It was getting late and most people had already gone home. There was only a dozen or so of my team members standing around the back patio in sort of a semicircle, just having drinks, telling jokes, laughing, just having a great time. But just as the conversation started to die down a little bit, one of my team members turns to me in front of everyone and says, "Brian, you're actually a really cool guy outside of the office." He said that. He said that. I mean, the worst part was he was actually being dead serious. I mean, the rest of my team members just stood there as stunned as I was as they nervously awaited to see how I was going to respond. I mean, how could you respond? So I just decided to play it off and throw myself under the bus by adding a little self-deprecating humor, which actually made things worse because perhaps they were inspired by a little liquid courage or the fact that I wasn't going to be their boss anymore. But pretty soon other team members started chiming in with their funny stories about me and my management approach. But I just continued to laugh it off and play it off as if it didn't matter. But the truth is, it actually did matter. In fact, it mattered a lot. And I'll never forget that evening after everyone had gone home and I was upstairs washing my face, getting ready for bed. And I remember staring in the mirror for a long time, sort of looking through my eyes, literally saying to myself, who are you? Who are you? I mean, I knew who I thought I was, a good guy, an A player, a leader. But obviously my team members had a very different perspective of me and my management approach. And it was in that moment I realized I had a problem. In psychology, it's called self-deception, which basically means you have a problem, but the real problem is that you don't realize you have a problem. Well, I can assure you, after that experience that evening, I knew I had a problem, a big problem. So I decided to do what any world-class leader would do. I quit. I'm kidding. World-class leaders don't quit, but I did. My wife and I quit our jobs. We put everything we owned in storage, sold our new house, and went on a worldwide sabbatical, which ultimately culminated in me writing my first book, Become Who You Were Born to Be. We all have a gift. Have you discovered yours? You see, I've always had this incredibly strong sense of purpose that I was put on this earth to make a positive difference in people's lives. And the truth is, in hindsight, I now realize that at the time I was just too green or too naive to realize that being a manager, or better yet, being a coach, provides the perfect platform to do just that. The crazy part is, with my new book, The Weekly Coaching Conversation, my story has, ironically enough, come full circle. Because if I would have known back then what I know now, if I would have known about this new management approach we call the coach, and if I would have access to the new strategies and plan that I'm going to share with you in this workshop series, I probably never would have quit that job, and my career and my life would have taken a much different path. But I guess the man had a different plan, and I needed to personally experience back then what I now teach today. I mean, it literally blows my mind to think about all the things that need to happen in my life and in your life to create this moment right here, right now, where our paths cross and our stories converge. So I can lead you on this incredible journey that you're about to experience. And when I say I'm excited for you, I'm not just blowing smoke, I truly am excited for you. Because you're going to be a very different type of manager, perhaps a very different type of person coming out of this program than you are right now going into it. Now, as you can probably tell, it has been a very long journey over many, many years to get to this point. And frankly, I've experienced a lot of setbacks and painful failures along the way. However, once we finally managed to crack the code, once we finally figured out this secret, this one thing, everything changed. And since then, I've been so incredibly fortunate to have had the opportunity to train thousands of managers and leaders from all over the world in all different functional areas, in dozens of different industries, on what it really takes to truly build world-class high-performance teams. And I've worked with dozens of clients ranging from well-known Fortune 500 companies to small and medium-sized businesses to high-growth startups. And finally, after years of research and a lot of trial and error, we uncovered our first big breakthrough that not only upends years of conventional thinking in the industry, but more importantly could have profound implications on your team's performance and your career for years to come. In short, we discovered the fundamental difference between world-class leaders of high-performance teams and most managers didn't come down to their experience, their strengths, or even traditional management tactics and leadership skills as the industry's led us to believe. The fundamental difference between world-class leaders of high-performance teams and most managers primarily came down to one thing: their approach. They didn't act like a manager, they acted like a coach. More specifically, we discovered there are really two sides to management. The process side, which deals with all the hard skills, the planning, scheduling, reporting, analyzing. And the truth is, most managers are pretty good at the process side to management. The people side, not so much. Surprisingly, we discovered the reason the vast majority of managers aren't very good at the people side to management really isn't even their fault. Because when it comes to the people side to management, most managers have never been taught the right approach. You see, despite all the hype and hyperbole, we discovered that when you get right down to it, there are really 4 different types of managers. And each type of manager has a very distinctive style or approach, which impacts the level of rapport they have with their team members and how productive they are. You have the nice guy manager, the do-it-all manager, the micromanager, and this elite world-class leader of high-performance teams we call the coach. And in just a few minutes, we're going to break down each management approach so you can watch a nice guy manager, a do-it-all manager, a micromanager, and last but certainly not least, a world-class coach in action. Now, this obviously assumes that you're aware of the fact that your team probably isn't firing on all cylinders, or that there's definitely room for some performance improvement. So I have a question for you. If you were to guess, how close to their potential do you think most people on your team are currently performing? 100%? 90%? 80%? 70%? 60%? I've literally asked this question to thousands of managers and leaders all over the world, and the general consensus seems to be about 70%. But take a look at this. Our research revealed that 1 in 4 employees, like your team members, report consistently performing at less than 50% of their potential, less than half of their potential. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, Brian, you can't measure someone's potential. It's completely subjective. And you know what? You're right. But that's not the point. The point is, most employees, like your team members, are telling us they have more to give. And the fundamental question is, what do you have to do to get it out of them? Now, imagine for a minute if you could consistently get an extra 15, 20, 30% or more productivity, more results out of each one of your existing team members. Imagine if you can not only initiate but sustain massive performance improvement and institutionalize continuous learning, growth, and improvement into every aspect of your organization's DNA, where your team members are constantly getting better and continuously improving on a weekly basis. How might that impact your overall team's performance, your organization's productivity, and your career? In the aggregate, when you multiply it across your entire team or organization, the cumulative effect is massive. It's the difference between winning and losing. It's the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. It's the difference between wanting that promotion and actually getting it. And more importantly, at the end of the day, it's the difference between looking back on a career filled with regret, wondering if you could have done more, wondering if you could have been more, or looking back on the type of incredibly successful career and legacy I know you want and deserve. Now, the good news is that this transformation we're talking about is a lot easier than you could ever imagine was possible, as you'll discover a bit later. But first, remember when I said there were a few common traps you absolutely must avoid if you want to truly build a world-class high-performance team? Well, pay close attention because it has to do with what we're going to talk about next as we break down the management approach matrix. By the way, if you have not already done so, please pause this video, print up the PDF worksheets found below this video because you will definitely want to take notes. So let's go ahead and roll this first clip of Nice Guy Manager Daner, and then we'll circle back to debrief on the other side.
Oh, hey, Jacqueline. Sorry to bother you with another meeting.
No biggie. Oh, so you're a bit of a sci-fi geek, right?
Guilty as charged.
Okay, then you probably know about this total Doctor Who marathon that's been playing all weekend.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. My favorite episode is like when he's totally ruined the space-time continuum, and then he's...
No, I'm not even into it.
Oh,
My
well.
husband has been sitting with the TV on all weekend, however. He hasn't done a thing that I've asked him to do. I just feel like he takes me for granted sometimes.
You know, relationship stuff, you know? It's just like, ugh. It's all a mystery. Anywho, listen, I got an email from the Big Cheese, and he's talking about how our pipelines are a little weak, and he really wants you guys to start doing a little more prospecting.
They know how hard we've been working. I mean, personally, I've never been busier.
Oh, well, I mean, nobody's saying you're not working hard. I mean, that's the last thing anybody's saying.
Look at this picture of a cat. It's hilarious.
Get out! That's hilarious. He's just like sitting there like, don't take this picture. You've got to send that to me.
Oh, I will. Sorry, you were saying.
Oh, right, yeah. If you could just find a little time to do a little prospecting.
You know how swamped I am. But I get it. I get it. It's the quarterly plea to do more prospecting. I've heard it 1,000 times.
I know, right? I know. But if you could just do your best.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll try.
That's all I'm asking.
Okay. Oh, we're going to that taco place for lunch.
Oh, count me in. And send me that picture of that cat. That's
Will
funny.
do.
Okay, so I know Nice Guy Manager Daner was a little over the top on that clip, but hey, I hate boring training programs, and I know you do too. So we're gonna get a lot out of this workshop, I promise. We're also gonna have a little fun along the way. But I'm curious, what's the likelihood that this approach is going to get the most out of his team members? It's not very likely, is it? The truth is, nice guy managers will never get the most out of their team members and will never be able to build a high-performance team for one simple reason. They're just too darn nice. The fact is, to get the most out of your team members, sometimes you've got to push them. Sometimes you've got to challenge them and stretch them to help them grow. Let me ask you another question. Whose team do you think nice guy manager Daner was on? Was he on his team's team or his company's team? He was on his team's team, wasn't he? And why might that be problematic? Well, for starters, one of the most important aspects of a manager's job, especially a frontline manager's job, is to get bottoms-up buy-in on the organization's goals and priorities and make sure that his or her team members are focused on executing the right short-term priorities so that the company can achieve its longer-term strategic goals. And if a manager is trying to be buddies with his or her team members and isn't completely aligned or on board with senior leadership's agenda, there's no chance that frontline employees are going to buy into doing what it is the company needs them to do to achieve the organization's longer-term goals. As far as common traits or characteristics, nice guy managers are friendly, non-confrontational, and easy to work for. But their fatal flaw is that subconsciously, they're more concerned with being liked by their team members than they are in getting results from them. From a level of engagement perspective, they're far too focused on the relationship aspect and not engaged enough on the business side in making sure that their team members are consistently executing and continuously learning, growing, and improving. And look, don't get me wrong, it's obviously important to be nice to your team members. I mean, nobody wants to work for a jerk. But it's also important you understand the consequences if you're a little too nice. In fact, here are a few. There's a lack of personal accountability on behalf of frontline team members because nice guy managers desperately want to avoid conflict at all costs and have a laissez-faire, hands-off approach. There's a lack of consistent execution because there's no consistent cadence or system in place to close the loop and make sure that team members are focused on executing the right short-term priorities. There's a lack of discretionary effort because, again, team members aren't being pushed, challenged, or encouraged to learn, grow, or improve. Speaking of which, there's obviously not going to be much growth or improvement because they aren't receiving much, if any, coaching. The result? Inconsistent, suboptimal team performance. Now, just out of curiosity, how many of you out there watching this video might consider yourself to be more of a nice guy manager? Raise your hand. Come on, be honest. I can see you out there. Look, I know what you're probably thinking. Brian, you can't put me in a box. My management approach depends on the situation. And while there might be a smidgen of truth to that, the truer statement is you actually do have a distinctive management approach, whether you realize it or not. How can we be so certain? Well, because again, we've literally spent years researching this, and I've asked this question to thousands of managers and team members from all over the world. And what's interesting is, while most managers want to believe that their approach depends on the situation, their team members have no problem putting them in a box, and rarely is it in the upper right-hand corner. If either you and or some of your managers have nice guy manager tendencies, I want you to remember, nice guy managers will tell you what you want to hear to make you happy. World-class coaches will tell you what you need to hear to make you better. Now let's see how do-it-all manager Melanie handles the exact same situation.
Well, I know I have to go with Stan on the client visit, but I have the upgrade miles. He can sit and coach. Well, then he shouldn't have fallen down the stairs and broken his leg, right? It's just Darwin at work. If Gimpy can't keep up, that's his problem. Besides, we need a new lead on that account anyway, right? Yeah. Okay, gotta run. So, hey, got an email from the EVP, and the company's made some commitments to the street, so we gotta up our game.
I don't understand what you're talking about. My numbers are solid, so.
Sure, but they're expecting the top performers like me to double the number of new customers by the end of Q4. So I'm gonna need you guys to do some more prospecting.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just completely buried here. I don't have any more bandwidth.
Okay, yeah. I know you guys are working hard, but do me a favor and make it happen. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, I'm on it.
Great.
But listen, about the Brixton deal.
Hold that thought. This is important. Hey, George. Yeah, no problem at all. I'm not busy. Well, we only have so many box seats that we give out as incentives for the company, and I got 4 of them. Well, I'm sorry, it's his son's favorite team, but he'll get over it. You know, it'll toughen him up. Well, 6-year-olds need tough love too, George. Okay, gotta run. Yeah, later. Funny guy. Okay, where were we? Oh, yeah, the Brixton deal. Okay, what's going on there?
Okay. Now, here's the thing. It's a 6-figure deal, right? It's huge. And they're trying to play hardball. They're holding this competitor's low ball offer over my head. But I've got it under control, so don't worry about it.
Hold on. What time's the meeting, did you say?
No, I didn't.
What time's the meeting?
Oh, it's Friday at 11.
Okay, perfect. I'll be there.
What?
First of all, I want you to email your contact and tell him that their account is so important to us that you've asked your boss to attend. Okay, obviously you're going to be there, but I'll drive the meeting. You remember how I closed the Hawkins and Thompson's deals?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be just like that. I will make them so afraid of our competitor's solution that we could double our price and still get the deal.
Great.
Okay, welcome back. It was a little painful to watch, wasn't it? So, what's the likelihood that this approach is going to get the most out of our team members? It's not going to happen, is it? Do-it-all managers will never get the most out of their team members and will never be able to build a high-performance team that scales because they're the ones doing all the work and stealing all the glory. So, whose team do you think do-it-all manager Melanie was on? Was she on her team's team, her company's team, or her own team? Well, she was on her own team, wasn't she? As far as common traits or characteristics, do-it-all managers have difficulty delegating and empowering their team members. They subscribe to the theory, if you want it done right, you better do it yourself. From a level of engagement perspective, they operate from two extremes. They're either all over it if it's a high-profile deal, deliverable, or project, or they're completely absent if a particular team member does not have anything significant going on. The fatal flaw of the do-it-all manager is that on a subconscious level, they severely overestimate their own capabilities and severely underestimate their team members' capabilities. In other words, they don't really believe in their team members or trust that they can get the job done without them, which is why they continually jump in and take over. What are some of the consequences of the do-it-all approach? Well, for starters, there's a lack of employee engagement because do-it-all managers haven't created the type of environment that fosters high levels of rapport, trust, or team unity. There's a lack of employee growth and development because do-it-all managers aren't giving their team members much, if any, coaching. There's no real personal accountability for team members to follow through because their do-it-all manager is continually jumping in and taking over. The result, inconsistent, suboptimal team performance and manager burnout. With that as a bit of background, how many of you would consider yourselves to be more of a do-it-all manager? Raise your hand. Come on, be honest. Look, I'm raising my hand because, as you know from my story, I was the quintessential do-it-all manager back in the day. But here's the deal. I wasn't trying to be a jerk. I was just trying to make stuff happen. In fact, I was so maniacally focused on doing whatever I needed to do to drive short-term results and put points on the board that I was completely oblivious to the consequences that my approach was having on my team members and their performance. But I have a question for you. Can you be successful with the do-it-all approach? You actually can, can't you? At least as far as the numbers or results are concerned in the short term. And while you may be able to achieve some success in the short term with a small team, inevitably one or two things are going to happen. Either your team members are going to get tired of you parachuting in, taking over, and stealing all the glory, forcing A players to quit, leaving you stuck with a bunch of mediocre players who are more than happy to let you do all the work while they just kick back. Or if and when you move up the organization and assume more responsibility in a bigger and bigger team, you'll quickly realize, as I did, that the do-it-all approach just doesn't scale. Because despite working harder and harder, the impact that you can have through your own personal involvement is less and less. And ultimately, it's going to cause you to burn out, which of course is exactly what happened to me. So look, if either you and or some of your managers have do-it-all manager tendencies, I want you to remember something important. The measure of true success is not about how good you are. It's about how much better you make everyone else around you. To reach the next level, you've got to realize that your job is not to build codependence, it's to build independence. And as ironic as it may sound, the less you do in the short run, the more successful your team will be in the long run. Or to put another way, as I mentioned in the book, as a coach, the only way you can achieve your potential is if you first help your team members achieve theirs. And now it's time to move on to the infamous micromanager.
Whoa, are those open-toed shoes?
I guess, technically.
Well, I've told everyone about the dress standard here at the office. You'll have to go home and change during lunch.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I guess I didn't realize.
It's in the employee handbook. Listen, I've got an email from our EVP stating that your pipelines are weak. So I'm going to need you to do a little more prospecting. So I got some marching orders for you. You'll want to write those down. First, I need you to step up and do more prospecting. P-R-O-S-P. Good.
I absolutely hear what you're saying. But right now I'm completely buried. I don't have any more bandwidth.
You know what? Let me just make this crystal clear, Jacqueline. I'm not asking, I'm telling. You'll up your outbound calls to 75 a day, or there will be consequences.
75?
And that doesn't mean you get to slack off on your call notes either. I want every person you contact, their name and title captured in the CRM.
Okay.
Yep. And I'm gonna need to review that. Yeah, I'm gonna need to review that to make sure it's done properly. So make some call notes, sum it up with something, bullet points. Bullet points would be nice, yeah. Between 4 and 7 is acceptable. I don't want to read through some rambling mess.
Between 4 and 7.
Then 2 returns, followed by the call to action in bold. Very good. Then, of course, you'll fill out the rest of the CRM fields as usual.
I understand what you're saying, but you do know that this is going to take some time, right? I mean, just because if I'm writing down everything for every single call.
Yeah, I know. So the temptation's going to be there to not hit your 75. That's why I've implemented call tracking software.
Call tracking software?
Yeah, it just files a report on how many outbound calls were made, the length of each call, average call time, that sort of thing.
Oh.
Okay, so any questions?
No, I think I got it.
Fine. Okay, then go ahead and get out there, get started right away. And you know what? Why don't we plan on having a meeting tomorrow? Same time. We're just going to check to make sure you're hitting those numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you could let the next person know that I'm ready for them, that would be great. Hopefully they won't see your feet.
Ouch! Wasn't that painful to watch? You know what the scary part is? Everything in that clip is actually true, even down to the open-toed shoe comment. Believe it or not, this stuff actually happens. It's hard to believe, but there really are crappy managers out there like this. But let me ask you, what's the likelihood that this approach is going to get the most out of team members? It's not going to happen, is it? Micromanagers will never get the most out of their team members and will never be able to truly build a high-performance team. And to understand why, all you have to do is to look at some of the common traits or characteristics. Micromanagers are known for being controlling, confrontational, and bossy. They voice strong opinions without first soliciting input from others. They're quick to correct but slow to praise. They're obsessed with perfecting the insignificant minutiae. From a level of engagement perspective, they're far too engaged and don't give their team members enough space, autonomy, and freedom to execute and act on their own. What's interesting is that on a psychological level, the fatal flaw of the micromanager is the same exact fatal flaw as the do-it-all manager, a lack of trust in their team members' ability to get the job done without them. Where this lack of trust prompts do-it-all managers to jump in, take over, and just do the work themselves, this same lack of trust prompts micromanagers to micromanage the work until it's done perfectly, just the way they would do it. Now, what are some of the consequences of the micromanager approach? extremely low levels of employee engagement, morale, and work motivation, difficulty attracting and retaining top-tier talent, team members aren't learning, growing, or improving because they obviously aren't receiving any coaching. The result, suboptimal team performance and a ruined career for the manager and a miserable work life for his or her team members. With that as a build-up, how many of you would consider yourself to be more of a micromanager? Raise your hand. Funny, I don't see many hands being raised out there. That actually reminds me of a quick funny story. A while back, I was conducting a live workshop for a group of 50 or so managers, and we had a great cross-functional group in the room, everyone from the EVP on down to frontline managers and everyone in between. Anyhow, we got to a similar point in the workshop where I asked the group, how many of you would consider yourself to be more of a micromanager? Raise your hand. And not surprisingly, not a single hand went up in the air. So not too long thereafter, we got to the coach and I asked the same question. How many of you would consider yourself to be more of a coach? Raise your hand. And immediately in the back of the room, one of the VPs, his hand shot up in the air with complete confidence. I'm thinking, wow, okay. So not too long thereafter, we had a break. And one of the directors who was sitting up in the front near me came up to me at the break and said, you know the guy in the back of the room that raised his hand, he was a coach? And I said, yeah. And he said, that's my boss. Total micromanager. That's a true story, I promise. But here's the deal. Just like that VP, in my story, and perhaps your story or some of your manager stories as well, we all suffer from self-deception in that we fail to realize that oftentimes there's a big disconnect between how we perceive our management approach and how our team members perceive it. In fact, let me just share with you one last quick story. I think I'll really bring this to life. A while back, I was preparing for a keynote I was giving for a large Fortune 500 retailer, and I wanted to customize my talk, so I spent some time interviewing some of the district managers and some of the store managers to get a feel for what was happening down in the trenches out in the fields. Anyhow, I just finished interviewing one of the DMs who, by the way, was absolutely convinced that he was a coach. He said, look, Brian, I have coaching conversations with my team members all the time. And it was interesting because immediately after my interview with the DM had ended, I sat down to interview one of his store managers, one of the DM's direct reports. And I started off by asking some questions about her current boss, the DM I had just interviewed, to get a feel for her perspective of his management approach. But she hesitated for a minute, and I could sense there was something more going on. And then she said, I'd rather tell you about the best boss that I've ever had. And then she sort of sat there and paused for a minute as she looked up, and her eyes started to well up with tears. With her voice trembling with emotion, she said, I'm sorry, I miss her so much. And when I asked her what specifically she missed about her old boss, she said everything. She said with her, she had her family, and then she had her work family, and you could feel it. She said she always got the best out of me because I didn't want to let her down. And then she said she gave me more coaching in a week than I've had in the last 3 years working for my current boss, the DM I had just interviewed. Wow, interesting, isn't it? You see, in the DM's eyes, he saw himself as a coach. Yet when I spoke to his team members, they had a very different perspective of him and his management approach. You see, just like that Seabiscuit story I talked about in the book, same employee, same potential, but vastly different results. So what was the difference between the best boss she had ever had and this mediocre manager she was currently working for? Well, the difference primarily came down to one thing, her approach. The best boss she had ever had didn't act like a manager, she was a coach. And look, regardless of whether you're a seasoned executive, an experienced manager, or even relatively new to management, and regardless of whether you're more of a nice guy manager, a do-it-all manager, a micromanager, or even somewhat of a coach, there is always room for improvement. There is always another level. And as you probably already figured out, the one thing you must do to take your team's performance and your career to the next level is to change your approach. Stop acting like a manager and start your journey towards becoming a world-class coach. And while unfortunately we've run out of time in this particular video, it's exactly what we're going to pick up in the next video, in video number 2. When we break down this new management approach we call the coach, and you're going to be able to watch an instructional coaching video so you can see a world-class coach in action. And in video number 2, I'm also going to share with you the 3 steps that you and or your managers must take to begin your journey towards becoming a world-class coach. But real quick, before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with a couple important action items. First, keep your eyes on an email from me letting you know as soon as video number 2 has been released and watch it immediately. Secondly, if you have not already had a chance to read my newly revised book, The Weekly Coaching Conversation, please make it a priority to do so ASAP, because just as a lot of what's covered in this workshop is not covered in the book, a lot of what's covered in the book is not in this workshop. They really do go hand in hand. And finally, as you can probably tell, I'm incredibly passionate about sharing my message with the world, and believe if you put enough good stuff out there, eventually good stuff starts to come back. So I hope you got a lot out of this very first video. And if you have any friends, colleagues, perhaps someone in HR, enablement, or maybe even your boss who you think might benefit from this free workshop, please feel free to share it with them using the social plugins below. I'm sure they'd certainly appreciate the opportunity to go through it while it's still available. So until we meet again in video number 2, keep coaching.